Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. So I recently made a change to one of our bills, and so I thought I would walk you guys through the process behind making that change, and also kind of just talking about how you can make the change if you need to as well. So if you're interested in hearing about that, then please keep watching. Okay, so before we talk about the change that I made, I thought we would talk about what our month looks like. And so obviously I am predominantly a pen and paper budgeter, and so that's why we are looking at this instead of a computer screen or, Excel worksheet or whatever the case is. So first of all, let's talk about these paydays. We're going to hit those first. And I want to point, so let me find me a pointer. So this payday is my payday. It is actually a variable payday, and what I mean is it changes from month to month, and it is also not guaranteed that it's going to come here. It is supposed to come the first week of every month, and typically it's supposed to come like the first Thursday of every month, but I've gotten it as late as like the third week, so I don't really rely on this too much. In fact, I don't really rely on it at all. I really don't expect for it to come here. So therefore, I do put it on here as that date, but I don't really expect for it to come. So with that being said, our first full payday for the month of October will be this day here. That is essentially a fixed amount. It doesn't much change. It might change a little bit, but not too much. We can pretty much always figure out or know like the amount that it's going to be, or around the amount that it's going to be. Now this is a payday for my husband. And since we're here, we'll hit his other payday. So he gets paid on the 15th of the month and the last day of every month. His paychecks are actually deposited into one of our other accounts. And we actually don't live off of his income. We live off of mine. And I don't really have any rhyme. We don't really have any rhyme or reason why we do that exactly. But I think it came from back last year when we started budgeting. My husband's income was way variable, like super variable. I'm talking like checks between like checks in the hundreds and checks in the thousands, and he was getting paid weekly, and it was just way too difficult and way too weird. And so because we were paying off debt back then viciously, we just figured that we would kind of have a normal budget and pay our bills and expenses and such using my income, and then all of his income would go towards debt. And so that's kind of how it started, and it's been the same ever since. I don't really expect to really change it because it's just what it has been. But yeah, that's the reasoning behind that. So these two are real paydays, but not really, because they go to our savings account, because currently we're saving money for a lot of different things that I will be covering in a future video, in an upcoming video. So these don't really count. This one, can't really count on it too much either. So we essentially count on these two. Now, I do have an online business, and a lot of those paydays, which I have about 5 different income sources from that online business, those start trickling in around the 20th of the month. Actually, in September, I received one on the 17th. So I don't really know when they're all gonna be like dispersed and deposited into our account. I just know that it's typically like somewhere around like the 20th of the month, they start to kind of, hit our account. And so those aren't really dependable really either, because we don't know like a specific day that they're going to hit. So we can't be like, oh, let's schedule a bill for this day, because we don't really know when that day will be. So that's kind of like what's going on with the payday. So now let's kind of talk about the bills. Okay, so what I have done is, first of all, I have listed all of our actual October bills. I also listed our November bills, but those are down here, so you can't see those yet because I'm super zoomed in. And so I've highlighted any changes, and those are kind of bills that essentially fluctuate from month to month. So while these are the amounts for October, they're definitely not going to be the amounts for November. Also, what I have done is I have calculated the bills that are due the first half of the month, which is typically the bills that are due between the 1st and the 15th, because that's essentially the first half of the month. And so that is this amount. Now, as you can see, the amount is $979.10 for the first half of October and $848.38 for the second half of October. But in November, there are going to be a little bit of changes to include our rent going back up to its new normal price, electricity going down, and the personal trainer fees going up. Because while I did budget $300 for a personal trainer in October, he's actually going to be going out of town the first week of October, which means that I won't train that whole week. So therefore, the fees are going to be less, or the amount that I have to pay is going to be less for October. But as you can see here, the first half $970.09, the second half $833.38. Now here's where it gets tricky. So what you're looking at now is actually not too terrible. Like, the amounts are not that bad. I mean, like, basically they are pretty similar, which is what you want it to be, especially if you get paid twice a month or every 2 weeks. You definitely want your bills to kind of be even. Like, let's say if you got paid the 1st and the 15th, obviously you would want like half of your bills to be due the 1st, between the 1st and the 14th, and maybe the other half due between the 15th and the 30th or the 31st, or whenever the month ends. And so that's essentially how you have to do it when you're paid every 2 weeks as well. And so that's why I like to see every now and again if our bills are pretty balanced. Now here's where it tends to get a little unbalanced. It tends to get a little unbalanced because of sometimes the electricity bill, sometimes it'll be due like at the first, like closer to the first half of the month, or sometimes the 16th. I mean, it is kind of like the first half of the month. So sometimes it gets a little unbalanced, especially in the summertime, because the bill is like $300 and $250 and all of that. But in the cooler months, it's not really unbalanced, because this is, budgets for the cooler months, October and November. So it's not too terribly unbalanced, but it sometimes does get a little unbalanced. So what I have decided to do is I have actually changed the due date of my student loan payment to be the same due date as my husband's student loan payment for many reasons, but also the prime reason is because of what I'm about to show you. So let's just switch our views to this other planner. Now, and there's a lot of thought that goes into this, probably way too much than there needs to be. So what I've done is I've gone ahead from November up until when this planner ends, which is June, and I've kind of highlighted when my payments, my fixed, dependable paydays are going to occur. So one is actually going to occur, let me get my little pointer, on the 8th. Actually, I can just show you, what it is that I'm doing. So the 11th and the 25th, and then 2 weeks from that. So the 8th, the 22nd, the 6th, the 20th, the 3rd, the 17th, and the 31st. That's unique because that's 3 pay periods. The 7th and the 21st, and then March, the 7th and the 21st. Oh, that's cool. I love when that happens. And then April, the 4th and the 18th. And then May, the 2nd and the 16th and the 30th. Oh, another one. Cool. And then June, the 13th and the 27th. So as you just saw, more often than not, my paydays, my first dependable fixed payday of every month actually comes basically after all of our bills, like majority of our bills are due. So at the current rate, we're paying roughly $1,000 because I got the number from here. So like October's different because we have like a credit on our rent payment. So that's why the rent is a lesser amount. But for November, the number should be pretty similar to this. So this on the 3rd, this on the 4th, and this on the 5th. And that's about $1,000-ish between the 1st and the 5th of the month. And I told you I don't really know when rent / water is going to actually come out. It may come out a little earlier, but as you can see, $1,000 right off of the top is going towards bills those first couple of days of the month. I don't really like that. Now, it's not like a huge deal, but it is a little annoying because that first check is not like that first check is $4,000 or $3,000 or $2,000. So having to pay this much as well as budgeting for food, groceries, toiletries, and all of those other things that you still have to budget for is a little bit difficult to swing this. And it's a little bit difficult to swing it unless you have like a buffer in your account, unless you are like a month ahead on bills, or unless you're like transferring from savings, which is pretty much what we typically have to do. And so that's a little bit annoying for me. And so I wanted to just make life way easier by moving this payment to the end of the month. And so therefore, when we come into the new month, it won't be so much money coming out of our check, or the check that I'm getting at the first of the month, because not the first of the month, but like essentially all of these are coming out of the check from the month prior. So all of these four, but this one is unique because that's just a one-time payment essentially. Those are coming from this check. And so like if we move to November, that'll be a payday. So all of the bills up until here are going to come from this check. And so again, that's just a little bit of a struggle. It's not like a huge struggle, but it really would make life easier to just not have so much money coming out at the beginning of the month, because basically what's taking place is the bills are being paid from the last payday that hits the month prior. So again, on this day, all of those bills essentially are going to have to pay, all that amount is going to have to pay for the bills that are due up until here. And then the same thing for December. All of this is going to be taken care of. All of this is going to be taken care of by this payday, etc., etc., if that makes any sense. I know that's quite difficult and might not be that easy to understand, but that's essentially why I made the change. Now, one thing that I want to mention is, let's go back to October, because that's the month. Well, actually, let's do September, because that's actually the month that we're in. I've already prepared the budget for October, so I basically just convinced myself that we're in October, but we're really not. We're actually in September. But let's take September as an example. If you got paid like the first of the month, and that's the only pay day that you had in the entire month, you could obviously just pay all of your bills on the first, on the second, or you can have them all due, just throughout the month, but still kind of pay them whenever you get paid. If you get paid on the 1st and the 15th, you can have bills due during this period so that they'll all come out of the check that takes place on the 1st. And then, the same for the second half of the month. If you get paid once a week, that's a little different, because basically you're getting paid all of the time. So when bills are due, it's probably not going to be that huge of an issue, because you're getting paid a whole lot. But for people who are paid bi-weekly or bi-monthly, I think is technically what it's called, people who are paid every 2 weeks, it's a little bit different, because we never have the same paydays every month, or it's just a little bit tricky. So I don't know if this is a situation for you, but for me, one thing that I think has always made it easier, even when I was single and still had the same, because I've always mainly been paid every 2 weeks. I was paid twice a month, like once on the 15th and once on the last day of the month for like 4 months at one job. So mainly it's been getting paid every 2 weeks. So for me, I have always found it super easy to just have the bills broken up by the first half of the month and the second half of the month, because chances are whenever a payday is going to come, like let's say for the 27th, chances are those are going to cover many of the bills for the first half of the month, which is the case. So many of our bills are going to be covered the first half of the month up until this payday, if that makes any sense. So that's essentially why I initiated the change. Again, I know that was a little bit confusing, because almost everything that I do and say is probably a little bit confusing, because like I said, I think way more deeply into things than I probably need to. But I honestly think that, especially if you're paid every 2 weeks like I am, it would definitely behoove you to just write all your bills down and don't even really so much worry about the paydays, and just see how much is coming out the first half of the month and how much is coming out the second half of the month, or really just how your bills are aligned and how you have them allocated. And just remember that you can definitely change the dates for any of the bills. I've never had a problem. I've probably changed the due dates for like 5 bills or so. I remember doing it for a car payment, car insurance, and I recently just did it for a student loan payment. So I'm pretty sure that everyone else out there can do it too. So definitely consider doing that. I know a lot of people ask me about that, and they tell me that it's a struggle for them to, you know, pay bills because all of them are due the first half of the month or the second half of the month, but you can kind of change the due dates. So definitely feel free to do that if you wish. I know some people even like split up their car payments and split up their rent payments and stuff like that. You basically just have to do what works for you. And like I said, while paying $1,000 in bills the first 5 days of the month isn't like super unheard of or super difficult even, it's still a little bit annoying for me because it's typically coming out, those bills are coming from the check that comes from the month prior. So that's why it's a little bit annoying for me, and I know it's probably a little bit annoying for people who are also paid every 2 weeks. So anyway, I just wanted to share that with you guys. I hope that it made sense. Typically when I don't think that I'm making sense, most people think that I am making sense. Obviously, if you have any questions, leave them down below in the description box or hit me up on Instagram. I respond to every single message that I get on Instagram because I don't like the little notification. It just annoys me. But with YouTube, I don't get notifications because I have those turned off. And so anyway, your best bet is to hit me up on Instagram if you have like a serious question. But otherwise, like I said, you can leave comments and such down in the description box. So I hope that you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you in my next one. Bye guys.